Hello, and welcome to this episode in the Historical Society of Harford County's Speakers Series. I'm Jackie Seneschal, your host for these presentations. And before we get started, I want to invite you to subscribe to the Historical Society of Harford County's website, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our guests today are Mary Raza and Peter Dacey. They're going to give us a history of the B&O Railroad Station in Aberdeen, as well as an update on all the efforts that are being made to bring it back to its previous grandeur. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mary and Peter to introduce themselves and walk us through the presentation.
Hello, my name is Mary Raza, and I'm working as the historian at the train station. And here is
Hello, Peter Dacey. I'm president of the Friends of the Aberdeen B&O Train Station.
So I'm going to start the program. We're going to talk about the history of the B&O train station. So just give me a second while I get the screen shared here. So the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was first chartered in 1827, and the first section of it was completed in 1830. It is considered the oldest railroad in the United States. When it was chartered, it was going to compete against the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, which was coming out of Washington, D.C. and going to the Ohio River. The B&O did not reach the Ohio River until 1852. And originally, when they were bringing freight on these train lines, there was no engine. It was drawn by horses. And the replica of the Tom Thumb is at the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore. That was the first steam-powered engine being used by the train system. So the big reason why Aberdeen has a train station was because they finally were going to build bridges over the Susquehanna River. The PW&B Railroad Bridge was the first bridge over the Susquehanna. It was built by the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad in 1866. Prior to that, ferries took the train cars over the river, and in ice storms in a couple of those years, they were able to lay tracks on the ice and bring the train cars across the river. The B&O was able to have trackage rights and could transport their trains over this bridge for a number of years. So the Pennsylvania Railroad then got involved, and this began a little bit of a competition. So the Pennsylvania Railroad took a controlling interest in the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad in 1881. They told the B&O that they could use their tracks until 1884. This led to president of the B&O, whose name was John Garrett, that he needed to construct a line that was parallel to the Pennsylvania Railroad so that they can make their trip from Baltimore to Philadelphia and then to New York City. John Garrett Garrett Island in the middle of the Susquehanna River is named for him, where the train goes over, and that train bridge is the longest on the B&O system. So the first B&O bridge over the Susquehanna was completed on May 11th, 1886. The train station in Aberdeen, along with all the train stations built between Baltimore and Philadelphia to complete this line, were done in 1885, 1886. So this was going to complete that part of the train trip. So you could get freight all the way from Washington, D.C. up to New York City. They did not have a tunnel into New York, only the Pennsylvania did. So that was led to their decline in later years. But the tracks were completed in 1886, and that was when the station was able to open. The architect of the station is Frank Furness. Frank Furness was a prolific architect in the Philadelphia area. He designed over 600 buildings. Most of them were in Philadelphia area. He worked for the Reading, the Pennsylvania, and the B&O railroads. The Aberdeen station on the line had 24 stations built between Baltimore and Philadelphia. Only 2 of them survived, and those are his stations, Aberdeen and in Wilmington. And Wilmington also has the Amtrak station and a Pennsylvania Railroad building that's called part of the Frank Furness Railroad District in Wilmington. In 1890, the Royal Blue passenger train was started, and this was a very elegant service train going from New York all the way to Cincinnati. Some of the train lines went a little further, they went to Chicago as well. So this was an opulent service that came right through Aberdeen. By 1907, the first bridge over the Susquehanna River was not able to hold the loads of heavier trains, and it failed, sending freight cars into the river. So by 1910, the second bridge was completed, and this is the one that is there now, and it was surveyed by the Historic American Engineering Record for its significance. So at the Aberdeen train station, it was central to the economy of the city in not only passenger service but freight service. And the big industry in Aberdeen was the canning industry, the Baker corn cannery. There's an image of this here, but there were many other canneries where they brought not only the goods through Aberdeen, taking them to other markets, but they also brought the workers from Baltimore would come up by train line. Both the Pennsylvania and the B&O brought passenger service and the freight of all of these canneries to distant markets. In 1917, a lot of the property that was growing all of the things that were being canned, the great farmland, was taken over by the Aberdeen Proving Ground. So they were still doing canning for a number of years, but the industry was dying out because that land had been taken by the military. So not only troops were being brought through the B&O and the Pennsylvania Railroad, but also the armaments, the supplies, everything for World War I and World War II were coming through these stations. So after World War I ended, and that was the establishment of the Proving Ground, it went back from being a lot of military supplies to civilian travel. So now you had different lines coming through the Aberdeen station from New York, including the Capital Limited and the Shenandoah and the Columbian, going all the way to Chicago. And then there was the Diplomat, the Metropolitan, and the National Limited that went to St. Louis. So the Royal Blue continued with the Washington Night Express to Washington, D.C. So this was the big years of passenger service before the automobile was the main form of transport. By 1958, with trucks taking most of the items and passenger service in cars and buses, there was no more passenger service north of Baltimore for Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. By 1963, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad took a controlling interest in the B&O. By 73, the freight line continued. It was a merger called the Chessie System. And in 1987, the corporate mergers created CSX Transportation, which is still the train company that runs past the station every day. So I'm going to turn this over to Pete.
Thank you, Mary. So we pick up when CSX was formed, and at that time, the Aberdeen train station was used as a depot for their own supplies and for their work crews. There was still a couple of tracks laid inland that were able to be utilized for service. But then over time, the station became vacant, and there were just incidents of periodic vandalism there and various other, as you can imagine, things going on that really turned everyone's eyes away from the train station, and it became basically, a blighted, dilapidated type of looking structure. And then in 2003, the city of Aberdeen condemned the building due to its disrepair. And at that time, the saving grace for the train station was the Historical Society of Harford County. They actually went to the court system and received an injunction on the condemnation, and they were able to rescue it. So the Historical Society played a significant role a savior role actually in the train station's history. Once that was secured, then CSX and Historical Society worked out an agreement whereby CSX would donate the train station and 14,000 square feet of land under the condition that the train station be moved 50 feet from its original location. The reason for that were the federal safety guidelines for railroads at that time. That was a requirement, and that was part of the negotiation. So in order to live up to that obligation and accept the train station property, a feasibility study was done by David Gleason and Associates in 2004, and that architectural firm is still the architect of record, and they are the ones that have really provided all that service throughout the years. A phase one environmental site assessment was done by Fred Ward Associates of Bel Air, and then the most significant dollar contributor, if you will, to the project at the early stages was the Maryland Historical Trust. They were able to get some grant money, and they also required a conservation deed of easement to preserve the building exterior and property. And that's in perpetual forever. That is forever. And that is a principal reason why the restoration of the train station has been worked on since then. So in between 2012 and 2016, the whole efforts to move the station were made. And then in late 2015, the train station was moved, thanks to the MHT grant award of $100,000. Plus, the Historical Society put money in, and there was other private investments in that particular move. So, as you can see from the slide, Wolf House Movers, they were the company that moved it. So, from 2017 to 21, there were establishments of, or rather, let me start over. In 2017 and 21, there were activities with the city and with the organization that helped move it to its current position. The city zoned the property B3 highway commercial and made it part of their transit-oriented development designation. The Friends of the Aberdeen B&O Train Station was established in 2020. There have been previous organizations involved with the effort. And then in 2021, significant structural improvements had to be performed, and they were done for a total of $230,000. There was a dormer on the back side of the train station that was not part of the original architectural features. It had to be removed, and extensive structural work on the inside of the building, as one can imagine. In late 2023, a contract to Baython Builders was awarded, and they were charged with completing the exterior rehabilitation at a cost of $775,000. They are actually, as of this date, which is June the 6th, 2024, the subcontractor McFreesh is putting the slate roofing back on the roof. That will complete the major element of the project, and we expect the project to be completed by July 1. Some of the major elements include the rehabilitation of windows, of doors. The shake shingle had been painted with probably close to a dozen layers of paint over time. A lot of that paint, as you can imagine, had lead in it, so that had to be removed. New shake shingles were part of the contract. Lower facade brick veneer. We had saved a couple people in the organization, worked hard on saving the original bricks. We had about 4,000 bricks that were saved. However, they were deemed actually inappropriate for application to what we needed. So all new bricks were made. The new slate roof, as I mentioned, proper gutters and downspouts. And one of the the most promising features of the station is the chimney, and that was reproduced in its original form. The next slide shows you some of the doors and some of the windows that have been restored. I believe only 3 out of the 11 or 12 windows had to be replicated, and I believe only 1 of the doors had to be replicated. This picture shows the lead abatement being performed in the little bit of snow we had earlier this winter. And then this particular slide is showing you the shake shingles, the brick veneer, and really the picture on the right highlights the dormers on the track side, which are very unique to the building. Here is the chimney, the original picture on the left showing a picture of that. And then on the right, the replication of the chimney, which was done by Hadley Masons out of Aberdeen. They did the brick veneer and this chimney, and they have some really master craftsmen with that company. So what are we going to do with the building? Well, we're hoping to have an adaptive reuse. Other train stations across the country have transformed themselves into various uses, restaurants, hotels, bakeries, types of town office buildings. So we're looking to lease the building, and we're looking for a tenant or tenants to occupy the building. The main mission of the organization is that the building and the exterior be maintained for forever, and that in order to do that, there's going to have to be a funding stream to replace the shake shingles at times, maybe some of the slate years out from here. So what we're trying to do is lease the building, make it part of Aberdeen's downtown development and Aberdeen's Maryland Main Street program, so that it contributes to the downtown revitalization efforts, bringing people into the downtown. And also of major significance is that it will retain an element to the history of railroading in Aberdeen and in Harford County and state and the country. The railroading heritage is a prominent heritage in the United States, and we're going to be part of that. In 2026, of course, America will be celebrating our 250th anniversary. And then the following year in 2027, the B&O Railroad will be celebrating its 200th anniversary. So we'll be participating in those celebrations and promoting the train station or downtown or city and railroading to the whole railroading community and all those interested in historic preservation. The next slide shows you our vision. We hope that we can transform the station into Aberdeen's historical gateway to our downtown, to our community, and to America's railroading heritage. That's the guiding vision, if you will, that we're working towards, and we're taking our first step with the exterior restoration. Of note is we're going to have a big community open house Saturday, August the 10th from 10 to 1. And Mary can talk a little bit about that.
So we're going to open up the station. We'll be doing tours at like 3 tours throughout the time period. We'll have some activities for the children. We're also going to have some of the features, some of the architectural features that couldn't be reused. We'll have some exhibits on original fabric from the building, and also some other artifacts for railroading heritage. And this last slide just gives our information. If you want to, we post weekly on Facebook. We're getting our website redone, so there'll be more content coming on there. And if anyone wants to contact us, we can get that done through the director email.
Well, thank you so much for that informative background. It did raise a couple of questions in my mind. One is, I have heard that the city of Aberdeen actually got its name because the first station master was from Aberdeen, Scotland, and this what's now the city didn't even exist. It was just the train station. So he named the area Aberdeen. Can either of you tell me whether or not you've heard this?
Yes, we have heard about this. And he was from Aberdeen, Scotland.
Well, that's it's nice to have my oral my local history confirmed by by more than just what I've heard over the grapevine. So thank you very much. Also a question that came up recently when I was wearing my other hat, which is chair of the county's Historic Preservation Commission. I believe, am I correct in assuming that all of the improvements that you all have done to the station have been reviewed for their appropriateness and their historicity by the Maryland Historic Trust?
Yes, anytime we change something, we have to ask for permission, and it goes before their board and they approve it. So we had things like we thought that we'd be able to use some of the original slate. That was not possible. They approved the new slate. They approved the new brick. We're talking with them currently about ramp access. All of that has to be approved by them.
Okay. Can you talked a little bit about what you're going to be doing at the open house in August, and I really do want to encourage all of you who are listening to this recording in the summer of 2024 to join us that day. I think it's a fabulous event. And I know that the hope is that it will attract some potential users because we really do need to have an occupant in the building so that it can continue to be, the hard work that's been done can continue to be maintained, and it can go on and be a lively and vital part of the community. So that's great. And it's also, as I think about it, between the rail station here and the Amtrak rail station at the other end of the street, you sort of have a whole corridor that was created very much by the railroads. So it sort of answers the question, why do we bother doing this? I think one of the reasons that we do this is so that we can understand where we came from, that we can understand that Aberdeen really exists because of the railroads, that it's named because of the railroads. And so they're a vital part of its past that we need to continue to recognize. I guess that's those are the only questions I had after this. Did you have any final closing remarks before we close this little conversation out?
Well, yeah, just picking up on your thoughts relative to the railroad's place in history in Aberdeen, and the fact that they're still active today. And you mentioned the Amtrak line and the Amtrak station. The Amtrak station is now over 50 years old, and it's eligible for a National Historic Trust recognition. And we do hope to, over time, tie in both of the train stations along with West Bel Avenue, which has many Victorian homes that were constructed back during this time of 1880 to early 1900s. So we're thinking along the lines of walking tours. We're thinking along the lines of conferences. The architect is a well-renowned architect, Frank Furness. So we're trying to look to the future to utilize these assets and help continue the story and create tourism, create activity, and keep the livelihood of Aberdeen and specifically downtown through the railroads. So that's more of a bigger type of reach, if you will, with the Aberdeen B&O train station. But it's something that really makes sense, and it's a matter of working with a lot of people to get that done.
I absolutely agree with you. For our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about what life was like for someone connected to the B&O Railroad, I'll point you to a conversation we recorded several years ago with Charlotte Cronin. Charlotte was actually born in a different one of the Frank Furness railroad stations. So that's where her family lived. Her father worked for the railroad. That station is now gone, but she talks about her life there and then the move to Aberdeen. And her father continued to work for the B&O Railroad and actually commuted from Aberdeen to Baltimore on the trains from this very train station. But she talks a lot about her life and what it was like to grow up in a railroad family in Aberdeen in the early 20th century. So I would encourage folks to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to look specifically for that conversation with Charlotte Cronin. With that, I think I'll wrap up this afternoon's session. I thank you two for being here and sharing with us what's happening at Aberdeen B&O Station. I also thank you for all your very hard work. I know that it requires incredible dedication and patience and skill and creativity to do what you're doing, but it's really important work. So thank you very much for doing that. And we hope to see you all in August at the open house. It was August the 10th, as I recall. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we hope to see everybody on August the 10th at the train station, the B&O train station in Aberdeen. With that, thank you very much for listening and look forward to another session on a different topic later this year. Bye-bye.